Hello, welcome, and greetings, everyone. It is GleeCon, and I am back with you again. Excited to be here for another episode of Lore of Warcraft. On our last episode, we ran around the Barrens yet again for the 8th part of the World of Warcraft Classic series, and with that one, we took Muln Earthfury, our Tauren shaman, and he's pretty powerful dude. He did die a few times in the episode, but to be fair, he was soloing some elites outside of Wailing Caverns. He got himself some Serpent Bloom, a 99-year-old bottle of wine, and got himself ready to go on the Wailing Caverns. So we'll be doing that dungeon very soon. We also have been reading the Alliance Player's Guide, which is a Dungeons & Dragons sourcebook, and we're going to continue that journey. We're deep in the middle of Chapter 7. We're actually going to finish the 7th chapter, which really means we're finishing the lore for the most part in this book. There are 3 chapters to go, and we should be able to do 1 chapter per episode after that. So we'll be finishing this book in just a few episodes. This has been reading different parts about the Alliance. We read about the different territories, and we're going to wrap it up with a pretty decent-sized chunk here today on the threats to the Alliance. So stay a while and listen as we look at these various threats. Okay. Old Bran Bronzebeard narrating. Here's what it says. We are up to our arses in problems right now, both inside our own ranks and otherwise. I'll touch on the biggest ones here, but don't think this is the sum of every enemy the Alliance faces. Talking about the big names is important, but we've got a lot more fish to fry. Keep that in mind. And that's true, because you can think about every zone we've been in. There are things that we're probably not going to talk about here. There's the Defius, there's the Black Dragonflight, there's the Trogs, there's the Dark Iron Dwarves. So there are things, definitely, if you just touch on the zones we've been in so far, maybe the Old Gods and some of the burning, what's that? I'm trying to remember what they're called. The people that worship the Old Gods, not Searing Blade. I can't remember. The Twilight's Hammer Clan. All right, so here we go with the Burning Legion to start us off. I'd say these happy little fiends from the sky are about our second biggest external threat right now, second to the Scourge, only because they're not as active. I'm going to make this very clear right now. The victory at Mount Hyjal was not only temporary, but also just a scratch on the surface of the Burning Legion's forces. Some people say the demons didn't come again for 10,000 years after their last defeat, and I have to laugh at that. Defeat? We've suffered more losses than the demons have at this point, and with the Alliance and the Horde no longer working as a unit against them, it's only a matter of time before the Legion builds up again and prepares to strike. Sure, they underestimated us once, twice, even if you count the Night Elves way back when. That doesn't mean it's going to happen again. And as a matter of fact, when this book was dropping, the Burning Crusade was out. So that is absolutely what happened next. And before we move forward, let's read some flavor text on that. Akalon nearly lost his concentration as the blade punctured his flesh, but his fury allowed him to regain his focus for the split second he needed. In an instant, blackened fire bathed the Night Elf's body, consuming the first layer of her flesh and clothing in mere moments. Confident, the Warlock began to turn back toward his destination as the assassin fell to her knees, only to snarl in pain once again as he felt a dagger slash across the back of his leg. Darthius kicked the rogue in the ribs, the massive demon strike likely breaking at least 2 of her ribs as it tossed her several feet down the hill. She tumbled, both in a desperate attempt to remove the flames burning away at her and to soften her fall. Akalon began the words to another spell, not wishing to take any chances with the mysterious assailant. He felt something tug against the back of his leg and turned to look down at his feet, impatient. "What now?" he exclaimed, ready to scream before surprise forced the breath out of his lungs. Ishi held tight to Akalon's leg, his eyes closed in concentration. Ancient words of power flowed from his lips as he continued his incantation, causing the crude glyph traced in the dirt to flare to life. "Impossible," was the last thing Akalon managed to mutter before Ishi completed his spell, and Darthius, noticing the mage's consciousness for the first time, turned to run. Akalon's vision went white as the familiar disorientation of teleportation overtook him. When he finally regained his bearings, it was far too late. "Who dares invade the lair of Kil'jaeden's right hand? Lord Kazak the Supreme!" The Warlock hadn't time to mutter an apology before the shadows overtook him. So there we had probably a Forsaken Warlock facing off against a Night Elf Rogue, and there was some sort of mage involved in there too. A good number of fun cults are still out there, fun cults, who think these demons are the winning team, and hell, at this point, I'm hardly one to argue. We need to get things together, or our cities will be toast as soon as Kil'jaeden decides it's time to play. What do we think we're doing? Really, I can't see any excuse for not sweeping the remaining demons off the map right now and closing up every portal we can think of. The Legion might seem weak right now, but I'm giving you fair warning. Things will change rapidly when they decide it's time to strike. We're actually lucky the Scourge is serving as a buffer to buy us time because the Legion realizes that they are facing a unique threat in the Lich King right now. And actually, I mean, in a way, the Scourge is like a branch of the Burning Legion. I'm sure Kil'jaeden is kicking himself for that one. The loss of Archimonde was a strong blow to the Legion too, of course, but nothing for which they can't compensate at given time. Also, probably not permanent. Right now, the Legion has a few major areas under their influence. The first is the Blasted Lands, where a Dark Portal still lies, even if it doesn't seem functional yet. I'm not sure if the thing is active or not, but chances are if they can get it to work completely, we'll soon see a near endless supply of demons prancing on through. There's already a good number of demons down by the portal, but I'm honestly not sure if they're guarding it, waiting for reinforcements, or what. These demons seem to be led by the Doomguard Lord Kazak, who commands a fairly large force in the Tainted Scar, which is the southern part of the Blasted Lands, bordering Stranglethorn Vale. Kazak probably could take over the area if he wanted to, but the loyal soldiers at Netherguard keep managed to stop his forces from advancing very far. In recent days, I've heard talk of a Dreadlord doing some nasty work in the area too. They called him Razalik the Defiler. Good name. I think you fight him. We'll have some quests against him. Another potential obstacle for Kazak's movement is the Black Drake Taramis the Devourer. Taramis seems unusually powerful for his size and age and extremely territorial. I have no idea why even a black would want to hold on to anything in that hellhole, but Taramis manages to keep a strong claw hold there. Yeah, and I do think there's black quests, if not maybe in the Searing Gorge or something. A lot of black Dragonflight quests. Fellwood is in much worse shape than the Blasted Lands, if you ask me. Sure, the Blasted Lands are well blasted, but the northern part is still mostly under Alliance control. Fellwood offers no such haven. The Emerald Circle, a subsect of the Cenarian Circle, has a few makeshift camps, and the Horde controls a base or two themselves, not that it helps us any, but the majority of the forest is corrupted and infested with demons and satyrs. Good stuff. If for some reason you haven't read my entry on it in Lands of Mystery yet, shame on you. Or listened, shame on you. Shadowhold in Jadenar serves as the primary fortress for the demons who live there. A dreadlord named Lord Banehollow represents the Legion there, while the Shadow Council, mostly orc cultists, runs day-to-day activities. Infernals still roam the Shatterscar Vale, and I suspect they may soon be commanded to cross the mountains all the way into Hyjal. I think that's in Ashen Vale. This is because the Legion prepares for another assault in the Dark Whisper Gorge in Winterspring. It's one of the last zones we'll do. And I believe a flanking tactic may give them an advantage over the Guardians of the World Tree on Hyjal's summit, although that won't manifest until Cataclysm. Dark Whisper Gorge is preparing for battle, but I have yet to identify a clear leader. I joined a group of Dragons and Argent Dawn Templars down there for a look-see and a bit of head-bashing a while back, and while we took them off guard, it's safe to say that the demons stand a good shot of overwhelming the tree's defenders if they have any tricks up their sleeves. Their fur? It would be very wise to bring an army up here now while we have the support of 3 dragonflights in the area and slaughter the remaining demons before they can take action. All in all, the Legion is just one of many reasons we need to pull the living together and start taking heads now before it's too late. Okay, of course, the Horde is also one of the major antagonists against the Alliance. I'll be frank, there's no good reason why the Horde should be a threat to us at all. The overwhelming majority of the problems with the Horde are of our making, but all that said, we still have to deal with them. For the time being, the Horde is now our most obvious enemy in that they are numerous, and old hatreds put the fight with them at the top of nearly every priority list. Old hatreds, and there's a nod to the book as well. It's silly. Both the Alliance and the Horde should be dealing with the Scourge first, but that isn't happening, and we have to deal with it. We need to push for a ceasefire, at least to get the time to smash the Scourge in Lordaeron. Okay, and if you think about it, in Classic, they slowly rolled out PvP. In Burning Crusade, they rolled out also PvP in each zone, little PvP wars, but still, it's localized. In Wrath of the Lich King, there's actually only a little bit of PvP, Winter Grasp mostly, and there's a lot of collaboration. Cataclysm, I don't remember what the PvP situation is there. I don't remember it being extreme because everyone's against Deathwing. Now, by the time you get to Mists of Pandaria, that has a big storyline that goes along with PvP. And Draenor, Warlords of Draenor, well, it's all about the Iron Horde. So not as much. There's a conflicted zone in the... yeah, not as much. And then in the Legion... I mean, there's... Yeah, I think Legion's okay also. Broken Shore a little bit. BFA gets back into some major PvP-ishness, but in Shadowlands and in the current one, it's not as much of a focus. I would actually say the focus is less than ever now in Dragonflight. Well, of special note is the Forsaken's recent inclusion in the Horde. I am suspicious of these guys, but at the same time, I can understand their point of view. The Forsaken are aware of everyone, even their new allies, and their new allies haven't done enough to reassure the Forsaken that if the Alliance is defeated, the Forsaken won't be the next enemy on the Horde's list. Some members of the Horde suspect the Forsaken might stab them in the back and wonder if they can trust the undead faction. However, the Horde did accept them, and there's no widespread Horde conviction that the Forsaken are inevitably going to betray their living allies, even if some of them do. As much as I preach peace with the Horde, they do have their bad apples, and those should be the first ones we break, or smash, or whatever. Number one on that list should be Varamathras. Is it smart to have a demon as one of the Horde's leaders, I ask? No. Sylvanas, I can understand. Her hatred and bitterness have some good mortal reasons behind them, but I find it hard to believe that a Dreadlord has our best interests at heart. And I'm pretty sure he gone. The biggest threat from the Horde right now is unbalancing us in locations that are already in danger. For example, the constant pressing at Ashenvale's borders diverts troops that could be reclaiming Felwood, and the bizarre attempts to take the Arathi Mountains keep the Stormpike clan and their allies away from the front lines against the Scourge. Think about it. If the Horde were working with us, how swiftly could our forces crush the demons near Felwood in Winterspring? Now, we can't just abandon these locations, obviously, but we need to get the battles there resolved rather than trickling forces in every few weeks and perpetuating a bloody war over a few rocks or trees. Yeah. The Alliance needs to get its priorities straight, withdraw its troops from locations that are not key, and focus on pushing in specific regions of importance. I've already made it clear where I think we should focus, but ultimately, just making a strong assault on any location would probably be beneficial. Of all the Horde races, the Forsaken are clearly the biggest problem, but we also need to consider that the Trolls could be a growing concern. The Darkspear Trolls do not have the long history of fighting the Alliance that some of the other tribes do, but there's a strong possibility that the other groups of Trolls will join the Horde in time. I mean, look at Zandalar and the Rivantusk tribe. In ancient days, only weird insect things rivaled the Trolls in numbers and territory. The Trolls are not to be underestimated. A united empire of Trolls would be fearsome indeed, and working with the Horde, they could be almost unstoppable. We should brace ourselves for the possibility of these alliances, and hope that we can get the Horde on our good sides before then. Well, that never manifests. The mighty Tauren and Orcs seem to be doing their best to avoid battle with our forces, and I thank them for that. Many Tauren work closely with Night Elves in their study of druidic magic. Perhaps eventually we will see Night Elves learning the path of shamanism from Tauren as well. I don't think you can be a Night Elf shaman. Maybe I'm wrong. But other races have picked it up in the Alliance. I see these races as the least threatening of the Horde right now. While Orcs have been our traditional enemies for generations now, Thrall isn't entirely a new beast, and his Horde functions differently from the invaders of old. It's taking me time to adapt, and many veterans of the Second War still think to bash first and ask questions later. But that kind of behavior is counterproductive for everyone. Thrall and Cairn are wise enough to see this, and they kept their side of the bargain when we sided with them against the Legion at the end of the Third War. Perhaps too much blood has been spilled to do such a thing again, but hope beats fiercely within my heart that I will live to see the Alliance and the Horde again strike together against the Scourge and the Burning Legion. And that was actually what was cool about playing through Warcraft 3 together on the show. And, you know, we might have to do some of that again at some point as a fun aside, because they've been doing some updates. They might have finally fixed those maps that we couldn't do in the final campaign. But it's cool because whenever they talk about these things now, like this final battle that the Alliance helped the Horde, now that I've played through with you guys Warcraft 3, I actually have like an image in my mind of that battle, which is kind of neat. Internal threats. It's hard to fight against the wicked creatures of the world when your brother is constantly trying to cut your throat. Okay, so yeah, this is the third major problem that the Alliance has, and that's infighting, and that's probably also true of the Horde. If you look at this, that looks like it's Forsaken. Yeah, I guess look at his arm. So we've got some Forsaken, or Scourge, really, more likely, fighting a group of, I don't know what they are, if they're just regular humans, or if they're like Argent Dawn, Scarlet Crusaders. We've got our fair share of traitors, and sadly that seems the norm for the Alliance. You can hardly sneeze in the Forlorn Caverns these days without running into a warlock or two, and while these guys aren't all necessarily traitors, they're sure dangerous. I don't care about the justification. Taking a demon as your pet isn't the world's greatest idea. You never know when one of these warlocks is going to do their best to sell us out to the Burning Legion, and frankly, I don't think they know when they're going to do it either. Most of these lads and lasses don't seem right in the head. It won't be long before most of these masters of demonology are controlled by the very demons they supposedly enslave. The power isn't worth the price. Warlocks, I'm sad to say, are the least of our concerns. It seems like damn near every major city has someone trying to sabotage it. My dear friend, Fandral Staghelm, is still my favorite, of course. He might have had good intentions in making the new world tree, I can't really say. But I'm no druid, and I can figure out pretty easily that forgetting a little thing like getting the blessing of the dragonflights first was a slip-up which may eventually cost us a great deal. Now, clearly this is a big deal. The new home of the Night Elves isn't safe. But he's got an even bigger skeleton in his closet. I'm hearing that he's been messing with marrow grain, and that's an herb used for curses. Nasty stuff, marrow grain. I fear what he intends to do with it, and I have my suspicions, but I won't jinx it by writing them down here. I hope we discover his intentions before he actually puts whatever his plan is into action. Then again, it's possible he's already using it. Stormwind is just as bad off. I'm certain we have Syndicate and Defius Brotherhood members working within the city walls, and that's bad enough. But Lady Presser is definitely the worst offender. I don't know what she did to get the prince's ear, but for whatever reason, she's managed to keep both the king and Lord Bolvar following her directions, and some of them are clearly nonsense. She's just playing games with our troops. We've got good men and women dying out there. This needs to stop, and now. I don't know what her motivations are, but she's certainly either working for something malicious, or she is malicious herself. The lack of action on the part of Stormwind is as deadly as any poison. Their inaction claims more lives each day. While the Scarlet Crusade can barely be called part of the Alliance, they're worth noting here. The Scarlets are for the most part bat crazy, and I suspect their leaders are being manipulated by something far more sinister. Perhaps Deathwing or one of his brood? Nope, close. Getting closer with the D word. Regardless, they still think we consider them part of the Alliance for some reason, so it's worth trying to get these guys to act like it. Get them to attack Strathholm with us or something. So long as they form the front of the line, we're probably fine. It's also worthwhile to keep your eyes open for any Scarlets who don't have the taint of insanity yet. There have been a few who have seen the truth and come back to the church, abandoning the Scarlets and working with us once again. I'd like to see more cases like this. All right, let's read a recruitment aside. Ask not what the Alliance can do for you. Ask not. I'm trying to get my JFK voice going. I can't do it. I don't have a Boston accent, and he's got that twang. What you can do for you. No, can't do it. Player characters can do many things to influence the Alliance. Here's a little meta talk. For better or for worse, the Alliance desperately needs leadership, and PCs could fill a key role by taking charge of a group within the Alliance, or ultimately even the Alliance itself. Wouldn't that be a fun campaign? On the other hand, a player could equally easily work to sabotage the existing leadership of the Alliance, or an up-and-coming leader who has not yet established herself. On a smaller scale, the Alliance needs troops, healers, tacticians, scouts, and pretty much everything else they can get their hands on at this point. A good politician could also make worlds of difference within the Alliance. Perhaps a persuasive diplomat could convince the Horde to work with the Alliance against the Scourge, at least for a short time. Alliance membership has a different meaning to nearly everyone. To many, simply being a member of one of the allied races makes you a part of the Alliance, but in reality, few people actively support it. The active members of the Alliance are mostly people belonging to specific organizations such as the Knights of the Silver Hand or Stormwind Intelligence, SI7. While this may seem an empty distinction, it's important to remember that not every human has any interest in working toward the goals of the Alliance, even if he's not a member of an anti-Alliance group like the Defius Brotherhood. Many normal people suffered from the foolishness of the Alliance and feel little loyalty for it. Okay, jumping back into our internal strife. The next subject is a bit touchy, but I'll jump right to it in it anyway. We don't know what the Kirin Tor are up to, but I'm not confident whatever it is will be beneficial to the Alliance. In fact, it could be quite the opposite. While they may have good intentions, accidents happen. Think Nomergon. We all appreciate the sacrifices made by the people of Dalaran during the Third War, but if we learned anything from the stories of the elves and the proof presented in the Legion's Coming, arcane magic is dangerous and corrupting. I've seen the dreaded Naga and Satyrs, and there's nothing to say that humans can't end up the same way. Remember, while Dalaran has produced true heroes, like Khadgar, for example, we've also had a strong line of Medivhs, Kel'Thazads, and even Kael'thas Sunstriders to deal with. It's hard to blame the High Prince for his decisions, but from what I understand, he works openly with Naga and demons now. Not a good idea. I hope the other Magi of Dalaran have a better plan in mind. Dalaran was also the breeding ground for the Cult of the Damned, and many of their members undoubtedly remain in our midst. The cult is still extremely dangerous. We haven't seen another plague yet, but it's just a matter of time. I would certainly hope that the Magi of Dalaran are working on a cure for the plague, but I can't count on it. And even if they manage to find a cure for the old plague, who's to say it'll work on whatever Kel'Thuzad comes up with next? Or perhaps it will be Sylvanas who unleashes the next plague. Regardless, these necromancers are a terrible danger. They spread their ridiculous beliefs more and more each day, and each necromancer could take out a small town if properly prepared. This is one issue I can't pose a miracle solution to. There's no easy way to identify cult sympathizers until they've reached the point where they are burned by the holy light. My only real suggestion is to be wary. It would be ideal if the Church of the Holy Light could find a way to detect plague-contaminated food or water before it is consumed, but I have a feeling that may be too grand in scale for the Church to deal with, sadly. It's pretty easy. It's like the sacks on the floor that kind of have like this green cloud coming out of them. Duh. And when you hover over them, they've got a golden cogwheel. I don't know how they can't figure this out. The last foul beast within our ranks is one of the greatest, apathy. As time passes and more soldiers are told to simply hold their ground, they become complacent with their role as door guards instead of fighting machines. Given time to fester, this could very well destroy our military completely. Now here we're getting to the big boys, the Scourge, the real main threat. The most imminent threat, I guess I would say. I would say the Burning Legion is the biggest threat. You can hardly take a step out of a good tavern these days without stumbling into one of the Walking Dead, and I'm not just talking about the lads who can't handle a good Thunder Brew lager. These walking corpses are the single biggest threat to the Alliance out there, and everyone else for that matter. I'm not even sure where to start. We're all aware of the threat the Scourge poses, but for some reason the thickheads in Stormwind are too busy antagonizing the Horde and withholding our forces to do anything about it. I'll arbitrarily start on the north side of the world and move clockwise to give you an idea of how many undead we've got in each location. Northrend. That's a lot of friggin' undead. The Scourge controls practically the entire continent with the exception of a few points of resistance from the Blue Dragonflight, mysterious crystalline golems, and the few remaining mortals. Chances are the situation will be far worse by the time we get any Alliance troops mobilized to support the area. That doesn't mean I think we should ignore Northrend, far from it. If the Scourge manages to force their way into the Dragonblight long enough to raise more Frostworms, we're in for a whole new world of hurt. Likewise, if the Lich King forces his way past the ancient wards protecting the Titan ruins, well, I don't even want to think about the possibilities there. Needless to say, the situation here is grim, and on a level unparalleled even in the rotting Plaguelands. While I do want to send considerable support to the Alliance troops marooned here and the Blue Dragonflight, I suspect doing so is impossible without first retaking Lordaeron. The boat ride from Kalimdor to Northrend might be doable, but I'm not sure it's even been attempted yet. I might want to look into that. Lordaeron and the surrounding regions, such as Quel'Thalas, is clearly the worst off of any areas close to home. In fact, it is home to a good number of surviving troops, and they want it back. Our main advantage here is, ironically, the Forsaken. They oppose the Scourge just as strongly as we do, but for far different reasons. The Forsaken are clearly a danger as well, but I'll get to that. For the time being, I would highly suggest we focus our efforts on the Eastern Plaguelands. Baron Rivendare and Kel'Thuzad are two key figures in the Scourge's power structure, and if we manage to raise Stratholme and destroy them both, that would likely be sufficient to reclaim much of the Plaguelands. I respect the members of the Argent Dawn for what they're trying to do out there, But the fact is a few Templars aren't going to cut it. We need a full-scale assault on Naxxramas if we want to take the Plaguelands back, and that's exactly what we should be preparing for right now. And that's actually the final step of Classic. The Alliance's defensive tactics are just bolstering the Scourge and Forsaken's numbers every time we lose a man, woman, or child on the battlefield. Taking a small group against Stratholme would be suicide too. We need the full support of all the Alliance's races for the type of assault needed to take down Kel'Thuzad. I wonder if he's the original, main final boss of Naxx. Araj the Summoner controls a fair chunk of the western Plaguelands from his seat in Anderhall, but honestly I'm not quite as worried about it. The Scarlets harass Araj constantly, and between their forces at Hearthglen and the Argent Dawn at Chillwind, I think that area is contested strongly enough to leave it be until Naxxramas falls. It's hardly an ideal situation, mind you. We simply don't have the resources to be spreading out as much as we are trying to right now. Plowing over the Scourge's cities like a steam tank out of control would be far more effective than splitting our forces, at least for the time being. If we take Stratholme, I fully expect to be able to push through the remaining cities with relative ease. Remember, the undead seem to lose coordination and control when too far away from their masters, and the loss of Kel'Thuzad would likely be devastating. Even if we can't destroy the Lich, driving him back to Northrend would be sufficient to make our chances of survival far, far greater. The area northeast of Stratholme, including Quel'Thalas, still has a fairly strong Scourge presence, but it's nowhere near as organized. As a result, I don't see it as a high priority. If the rumors of Blood Elves returning are true, perhaps they can handle it, at least for a while. The fact is, until we deal with the eastern Plaguelands, we can't do a thing to help Quel'Thalas. I feel bad for our High Elf friends, but the damage has been done, and rushing back will not change a thing. Small pockets of Scourge activity exist throughout the remainder of the Eastern Kingdoms, but with no real organization. This doesn't mean that these creatures are not a threat, they simply do not pose the same level of danger that the Northern Scourge forces do. The possible exception is the area around Karazhan. A number of ghosts and other strange undead creatures dwell there, but I have little idea as to what the source might be. Everything I've researched seems to indicate that a powerful mastermind controls the tower for some nefarious purpose, but what evil lies within those ruins? The spirit of Sargeras escaped when Medivh was slain. The Death Knight Terran Gorfiend, not seen since the Second War. Deathwing, who disappeared at Grim Batal years ago. There are many rumors as to what might have taken command of the legendary tower and the nearby crypts and ruins, but I have sadly not found any conclusive proof. It warrants investigation, but it is one of the few missions I dare not undertake alone, not yet. Yeah, you need a full raid. I fully intend to take a strong group of adventurers to the tower to investigate at some point in the future, but as of now I believe that Stratholme remains our highest priority. However, the Karazhan area is extremely dangerous, and it can become more so quickly. The increased undead activity in Duskwood may be an indication that something dark is coming in soon. Anyone living in that area should be on their guard and, in my opinion, ready to evacuate. The Night Watch is competent, but who can say what ancient evil they might stand against? Kalimdor and the South Seas are mostly devoid of major Scourge activity now. The brunt of the Scourge escaped after the battle at Mount Hyjal. A powerful Lich still retains a foothold in the Razorfen Downs, a series of caverns in the Barrens, but he's the only real example of intelligent undead I've heard about in Kalimdor recently. I didn't realize it was a Lich behind that. Actually, scratch that. There are a number of ghosts in Dire Maul and Feralis, but they aren't Scourge creatures, so they don't count. Yeah, I think they're like ogres or something. Likewise, highborn ghosts haunt a lake in Winterspring, a large portion of Azshara, and some other scattered locations. These are worth noting, but they aren't associated with the Lich King, although I fear that in time he may take control of them as well. One of the Centaur clans in Deslis also recently began practicing necromancy, presumably at the behest of the Scourge. They could be a considerable threat as time goes on, but for the time being they remain occupied with their ancient war against the other Centaur clans. So that's Maradon, which is one of the later dungeons that opened up. That's a little ways off for us. All right, let's do some more flavor text. It took you long enough. They were the first words Ishi spoke as he awoke to the familiar figure of a night elf girl sitting by the campfire only a few short feet away. He blinked for a couple moments before realizing a staff was slung over her shoulder. The Amber Seal Keeper. The mage smiled. I told you he'd stab you in the back before you even got to the crater. You owe me an ale, she said with a grin. On second thought, though, I might just keep this thing instead. I rather like it. It's sort of cute. It's a staff, Elaine. You can't even use staves. Yeah, you don't have proficiency. Ishi grumbled, having had this conversation with her nearly a dozen times in the past. He was confident that the rogue already had a few magic staves in her collection, and probably at least 2 of his robes, too. You know it'll be put to much better use in my hands. Or at least let me take it back to Sal. He'd give it to a priest or something and reward us for the drop-off. She seemed to consider his point, then shrugged. What's the closest city? She asked. He considered her question for a moment, then grinned, realizing she already knew the answer. Booty Bay. Okay, you get your drink, but I don't think there's enough pirate gold out there to purchase a relic like this. He sat up, rubbing the back of his head. She had already treated his wounds, which, from the look of it, were superficial compared to hers. He could see why she wanted a good ale about now. I'll get the portal ready the moment you hand me the staff. She tilted her head to the side, then stood wincing slightly from the pain of her burns and bruises. Well, you're going to have to catch me for that, silly mage. She turned and sprinted off toward the Swamp of Sorrows. He stood slowly, then shook his head and started to run after her. It was going to be a long night. All right, and let's wrap up this section in this chapter by reading about some miscellaneous other threats. Threats to the Alliance are everywhere. The rampaging centaur clans of Desolus would be extremely dangerous if left uncontrolled, as could many of the other wild races of the world if they grew organized. There are a few more immediate threats, however, and they warrant serious discussion. The Silithid are coming. Something stirs beyond the Scarab Wall in southern Silithus, and the time is soon approaching when we will see what evil lurks within Encourage. While I hear the Night Elves had some success in fighting against the Silithid about 1,000 years ago, with no small amount of help from the Bronze Dragon flight, which surprises me a bit, the Night Elf Empire is clearly no longer in the same shape it once was. Without Malfurion Stormrage, I fear the Night Elves lack the leadership to coordinate and stop the movement of this skittering menace. While we do not yet know the scale of the impending Silithid invasion, there's a strong possibility their forces will be a threat comparable to that of the Legion once released. If my suspicions are right, their master is perhaps as fearsome as Archimonde himself, really more so, it's an old god. We must also not forget Illidan Stormrage in Outland. Rumors say that he has a force of Naga blood elves and Draenei with him, and that his final battle against Arthas nudged him into madness. In fact, with his brother Malfurion missing in action, who knows what Illidan might do? His faction might be strong enough to rival the Alliance or the Horde, perhaps. Let us hope his attention remains focused on the Scourge and Arthas, the one who defeated him at the Frozen Throne. I don't really think he ever is, bad. Speaking of Naga, they are a threat of their own accord. While some work with Illidan, they are all loyal to Azshara and Nazjatar. It is no secret that they wish to reclaim the world, and their increasing attacks on our shores might be preparations for a full-scale war. Note what's kind of going on in Darkshore with the things that we keep finding, and we're going to move our way into Black Fathom Deeps probably and see more. A number of Alliance betrayers have created their own organizations, such as the Defius Brotherhood and the Syndicate. These human organizations are too small in scale to, say, lay siege to Stormwind or something, but their ability to infiltrate Alliance guilds and influence them politically is considerable. The Syndicate also has massed enough numbers to take over a good chunk of Stromgarde. Sending help to the League of Arathor should be one of our highest priorities. Yeah, you're contradicting yourself, Bran, because look how many highest priorities you've already mentioned. With Stromgarde back in Alliance hands, we would have a solid base of operation in the lands near Lordaeron. There are other human crazies out there to watch out for. The Bloodsail Buccaneers come to mind, but most of them aren't groups that will single-handedly turn the tide of the impending war. Finally, while I've mentioned them before, I have to emphasize the danger posed by the Black Dragon flight. Deathwing may still be missing, but his children are among the most dangerous creatures in the world. Onyxia stands poised to take Theramore with a bit more preparation, and Nefarian seems hard at work on fulfilling his father's dreams of creating a chromatic dragonflight. Should either of them succeed at their plans, it could spell the end for the Alliance, if not the Horde as well. I hope the other dragonflights realize the danger posed by these worms, and see fit to act soon and save us all some trouble. Nope. Alright, so we are... we've wrapped this one up. We got all the major parts of lore done next. I know one of the upcoming chapters will be military. One will probably be just some stats on either items, or I don't know what we have left. And then maybe a bestiary. And then it'll finish off with some quests. All right, we have another episode in the pipe, 5x5. Thank you, everyone, so much for tuning in, for watching, for joining. I hope you liked it. I hope it was good. And I look forward to seeing you next time on Lore of Warcraft.